Brian Ledden then.
Minister, I want to acknowledge the effort made by you and your department over the past few years. Our task to reduce our emissions significantly is a gargantuan one. It will require significant and sustained effort from all members of society and all sectors of the economy. But effort should not and does not equate to burden. Often we tend to forget this. But if we were to look at the benefits of acting on climate change, such as cleaner air and water, warmer homes and greater energy independence, on the whole our country stands to gain. While my party is on record as wanting increased ambition, I still think it is important to acknowledge the work done to date, particularly in getting different departments to work together. The fact that you are presenting your statement today with 3 of your ministerial colleagues to account for progress in line with the 2015 Climate Action and Low Carbon Development Act, and that we have dedicated almost a full day of Dáil time to discussing your statements is an important step. The establishment last year of the Climate Action Delivery Board, chaired by your department and the Department of Taoiseach, is a very welcome development and provides a structure where actions can be coordinated and delivered at the highest levels of government. I also support the establishment of a climate change unit within the Department of Taoiseach, serving as an important liaison between relevant departments. As each year passes, our targets become ever more urgent. You acknowledge in your annual transition statement that our 2 biggest sources of emissions, agriculture and transport, which together make up well over half of our emissions, are increasing by almost 2% respectively per year. Every year that our emissions increase makes life more difficult for our young people and the future prospects of key sectors in the Irish economy. We know that they will have to not only cut their emissions, but that those cuts will become increasingly drastic as a result of the unsustainable trajectory that we are currently on. Increasingly, the threat to our planet is becoming more tangible. The news headlines keep coming. Yesterday was an unprecedented 30 degrees Celsius temperature in the Arctic. Closer to home, April and May were the driest 2 consecutive months in the Phoenix Park since records began. We face a hosepipe ban due to water shortages. There are fears about our fodder stocks this winter. We have been talking about decreasing our emissions for so long, there is a temptation to be casual as we reduce the scale of ambition needed to a percentage figure. But I think you will agree, Minister, that whatever targets and measures that are committed to, we can neither be casual nor reductionist about them. Averting dangerous climate change requires collective understanding and determination within and across the Irish economy and society. As I've said, your department has made great strides in driving a whole-of-government approach to climate action, but it's clear that a great deal of the action does not actually sit with your own department. We need all sectors to play their part while making sure that no sector is targeted unfairly and that the most vulnerable in society are protected during our transition. I want to acknowledge the contribution of the electricity generation sector, which falls under the Minister's department. It is the one good news story that we can celebrate, and we should be proud that Ireland regularly tops the polls ahead of our European counterparts in the generation of electricity from wind energy. We have been increasing our share of electricity that is generated from renewable sources, and it looks like we are up to 36% at the end of last year. We had a target of 40% by the end of 2020, and it looks like we won't quite get there, but it is still impressive growth from our starting point of less than 5% in 2000. We have seen innovation and dynamism from both private and public sectors in getting us to where we are today, from the wind energy sector, from our national grid, and all the vital national infrastructure that has got us so far. While I'm aware that Ireland is often criticised for our domestic performance on climate change, I appreciate that our challenge to reduce emissions is unlike many other countries. Our emissions challenge does not lie in decommissioning carbon-intensive industries, but in investing heavily in our housing stock and transport systems. We also have a major challenge with emissions from our agriculture sector. Irish agriculture is striving to be as sustainable as possible, and I fully recognise that, but we still have progress to make to reduce emissions in agriculture and to work with the sector to identify and pursue the most viable, fair and accessible options for our farming communities. I also wish to acknowledge Ireland's efforts to advance international climate action, chiefly articulated through the work of Irish Aid and your department, Minister. The UN climate regime, while cumbersome at times, has been essential to driving collective, fair and country-led action. As is often said, climate change does not respect boundaries or economic status, but the impacts of climate change are far more severe and devastating in the very countries that have negligible greenhouse gas emissions, for example, the countries that fall into the category of least developed countries and small island states. The UN system gives these countries a fair and equal say on international climate action, and we should continue to be fully behind that. By the same token, Ireland has a strong and well-proven reputation for supporting and standing with countries that are most vulnerable to climate change impacts. While our island and economy is small in comparison to other big donors, our focus and concentration of support for the most vulnerable is applauded worldwide. This has been most recently cited in an OECD peer review of our development assistance. We have become a reliable and entrusted partner to some of the poorest countries around the world, and we should be proud of that. In the last few years, Ireland has increased its overseas development aid and international climate finance budgets, trends that are very welcome. However, we're aware that international development cooperation tends to be one of the first budgets to face cutbacks in financially challenging times. This tendency cannot and should not become reality in the upcoming efforts to rebuild the Irish economy after COVID-19. Any backsliding on our commitments to meet our overseas development aid and climate finance targets would put a strain on that trust and undermine our voice in both the EU and UN systems. It also risks reducing the positive impact of Irish development cooperation in countries that continue to battle the consequences of a changing climate. It's often and correctly said that investments made today will have lasting impacts for decades to come. Minister, I'd also like to touch on the opportunities that we as a country can avail of through the green recovery that was recently presented by the President of the European Commission. Under the recovery package, Ireland is in line to receive up to €1.2 billion in EU grants. This funding could make a phenomenal difference to building back our economy in a cleaner and fairer way. We are at a juncture where we can use EU funding and national investments to not only build our economy back, but to bring to life our ideas for safe and sustainable mobility, thriving local economies and improved energy infrastructure. Fui era ara boalum lauert fui mayal canter fénig Carlimni. My constituency is seen as an urban one, but it has a significant rural hinterland in the counties of Limerick and Tipperary. In some ways, my constituency is Ireland in microcosm, reflecting the mix between urban and rural. When elected, I pledged to represent the farm families in my Youghal counter as vigorously as those who live in housing estates. There are those who wish to use climate as an excuse to drive a wedge between rural and urban communities. I reiterate my party's position that it is not urban versus rural. It is rural and urban working together to tackle climate change, to give our children a better and more sustainable future. Gur Magat.